It's a really important story to ground what it means to have employees who are responsible and who do what's called task ownership. And this is actually a real story. It was a story that came out of a school. There's only one classroom in this entire school that was using our responsibility-based culture model. And this teacher knew that the priority that she had in bringing in this model was to learn how to transfer responsibility to her students, to own the tasks that were theirs to own in order to be personally responsible and fully engaged. So some of those tasks are things like managing their own relationships, managing their own productivity, engagement, plan for progress, their own skills mastery, those kinds of things. Just like you have cross-functional meetings in companies, they had classroom meetings to problem solve and to list, areas of concern and so on. And so in this classroom, the teacher had invited me to come and help her, to model to her, how does she do this transfer of responsibility? And it just so happens that the day that I attended this classroom meeting, that one of the 8th grade boys came in and said, I want to put something on the agenda that just happened this morning. And what had happened was that the school had adopted what's called a peace pledge. It's kind of like a pledge of allegiance. Only in this instance, they had to put their hands on their heart and say, I promise, I pledge to use my words and actions for peace. And he said, I don't have a problem with the pledge. I have a problem with the fact that the homeroom teacher, was harsh and pointed to us and said, if any of you don't do this pledge, you're going to get a detention, which is kind of ironic, right? And so his agenda item was, I don't want to be bullied by teachers in this school. And so he put that on his, to talk about during the meeting. So when it came up, the teacher looked at me and said, would you show me how you would do task ownership and, transfer of responsibility on this? And I said, okay. So I asked him, I said, first of all, what do you want regarding this agenda item? And what do you want regarding peace? Do you want peace in the school? And he said, well, yeah, I do. And I said, good. I said, do you want peace with that teacher that's bullying you? And he said, I do. And I said, good. And I said, then are you willing to look at where you're doing war? And he said, me? How am I doing war? I'm the one being bullied. And I said, that is true. And are you willing to look in case you find some places you're doing war? And he said, okay. And I said, do you ever say bad things about this teacher behind her back? And he said, well, yeah, I hate her. And I said, anything war-like about hate and gossip? And he said, well, yeah, and I said, okay, do you ever try to go to her and work out your problems with her? And he says, well, no, we're all afraid of her. And I said, do you know that fear of a person is being in attack mode? And he said, no, I don't know that. What do you mean? And I said, if a dog comes running at you and it's barking at you and it's ferocious with you, if you get more afraid, will that dog get more hostile or less hostile? And he said, that dog will get more hostile. And I said, you're absolutely right. Why? He said, I don't know. I've never understood why that would happen. Never thought about it. And I said, the reason the dog gets more hostile is because when you're afraid of the dog knows you have it in a monster box. The dog knows that you are hostile toward it because you see it as enemy. And they're going to feel it as though you're an attack to them. So they're going to up their own attack back at you. So you're actually, by being afraid of your homeroom teacher, you're actually in a war mode with her. And he said, wow, I never knew that. And I said, well, of course you didn't, because nobody's taught you that. So now that you see the places you're doing war, what do you want to do now? And he said, well, I want to go to her and try to work it out, but I don't even know how to begin. I said, well, isn't it great that you guys have time in a group of 20 students and a teacher, and in this case, a consultant, all available to help you role play and brainstorm and come up with ways you're going to go to her with your intention for peace. And so what was really amazing, and this is going to happen to you in your workplace, when one person becomes responsible and that transfer occurs, other people automatically start becoming more responsible. So like other kids started to say, I'll go with you because I've been doing WAR and I didn't know I was doing WAR with her. And the teacher even came to me afterwards and said, I know you're doing school reform. I want to leave my role as a teacher at the end of this year and do school reform with you because I'm tired of looking at all these values plastered all over the walls of the school. They're about as crazy as saying reading is essential and math is crucial, and not having any reading or math classes. And if we don't know how to teach kids to have this responsibility and this ownership and this ability to manage these things like relationships, we're really doing them a huge disservice. So as that student's responsibility rose, so did everyone's. And what's also really important about this story, there's lots and lots of things you could take out of this story. Two other ones that I'll just say right now are, when you're transferring responsibility to employees, you have to become more Socratic. What do you want? What do you want regarding peace? Do you want peace with that teacher? Now what do you want to do? Did you know that this is this? It's all very much a questioning process more than an advising and counseling process. And also, it's such a great example of how you can take a really good tool, like a peace pledge or a communication tool, and you can plaster it on top of a faulty foundation that ruins that tool and its effectiveness. And I see that happening over and over again in businesses that are trying to change culture. They bring in all kinds of like what almost feel like Band-Aids if you haven't corrected the underlying infection or problem that's going on. And that's probably the main thing I want you to know by the end of this presentation, is how important it is to get all the roots out of the problems underneath a lack of responsibility and task ownership.